Yeah, the message of today's gospel is very clear. We are to forgive one another as Christ, as God has forgiven us. Otherwise, we would be hypocrites, right? Otherwise, we would be hypocrites. So it's a very clear gospel, but it's difficult to put into practice. And each one of us has to kind of figure out who are the people we have the most trouble forgiving. For some people, they find it easy to forgive strangers and difficult to forgive their families. For some people, they find it easy to forgive kind of intentional things, but difficult to forgive bad drivers on the road, right? Each one of us has to figure out in our own spiritual life, what are the areas where I need to grow in forgiveness? It's also not going to be possible to follow this gospel without supernatural grace. You are going to need God's help. You cannot muster up supernatural forgiveness by your own efforts. So you got to pray. You got to have a spiritual life that you can draw on in those moments of challenge, in those moments of difficulty. Our saint today, St. Maximilian Kolbe, had a very, very deep spiritual life. Really from a very young age, from the age of 7 years old, he had a very serious spiritual life. And he drew on that throughout his ministry in Japan and in Poland and a little bit in India as well. But eventually he came to a point when he had to make a really, really deep act of supernatural forgiveness. In fact, he had to make multiple acts every day, because he was arrested by the Germans during World War II. He was a Pole, and he ended his life in a concentration camp. And we have accounts from people who knew him in that camp that he would sometimes even forgive his captors as they were beating him. As they were beating him, he would forgive them. So a sobering example for you and me, right? You and me, we struggle to forgive people for such little things, for things that matter so little in the grand scheme of things. But this saint, this great saint, Maximilian Kolbe, he was able to forgive atrocities committed against him. And really, the true model of forgiveness is our Lord on the cross, right? Who said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Let's ask the Lord for the grace to grow in forgiveness. You and I, God willing, are not going to have to make the supreme act of forgiveness that our Lord did or that Maximilian Kolbe did tomorrow or next week, but we may be challenged in the future to make that act of forgiveness in our heart, right? Because forgiveness is not really for the good of the other person, it's for our own good. It's for our own good, so that we are not weighed down by hatred, by a grudge, by hardness of heart. So I want to leave you with a quote from a letter Maximilian Kolbe wrote, and he wrote this in 1940. He was in Japan. He wrote this letter, he was in Poland. He wrote this letter to Japan, and this was just a couple years before he was arrested. Sources of merits are, among others, the grief caused by other people. It's a source of merit. In these cases, we may indeed, with blessed hope, repeat each time in the Our Father, "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." This prayer was taught to us by Jesus himself. Therefore, complete forgiveness of the sins others committed against us suffices for us to be entitled to forgiveness for the sins that we commit against God. What trouble would it be then if we had nothing to forgive? And what luck when, in the course of a day, we happen to have many and more serious matters to forgive. To be honest, nature is appalled when faced with suffering and humiliation. Yet, in the light of faith, how necessary these things are to purify our souls.